Hello, my name is Dr. Shane Watt. My office is the Neurobolic Health Center located in South Shore in Utah. Today we're going to discuss something that most people are unfamiliar with, but they hear a lot of advertisements about it. It's something that's called hypochlorhydria, the truth about stomach acid. Now, most people think that they have stomach acid issues because they have too much stomach acid, and that's why we have so many medications that are given out for it. But I am going to explain why that thought process is most of the time incorrect thinking. So let's look at this. Unfortunately, we have been given a whole lot of propaganda, if you want to say, from pharmaceuticals, and unfortunately the doctors hear their messages from the pharmaceuticals reps. There's been over 110, this is in 2009, there was over 110 prescriptions given for antacids. Let's talk about this. I'm going to propose to you that the reason why we're having stomach problems and acid issues is because of too little stomach acid, and that is what is called hypochlorhydria. So let's get into this and let's explain this to you. Here's some of the symptoms that we have. After eating a meal, do you experience any of the following? Do you have lots of burping? And sometimes not really good tasting burping or foul smelling burping? Do you experience gas or gas pains an hour to 2 hours after eating your meals? Do you feel that bloated feeling after eating that lasts for a long time? Or that heavy feeling in your stomach like it's just sitting there? Well, those are symptoms of hypochlorhydria. Well, some of the signs of hypochlorhydria and some of the effects are this. Failure to digest foods properly. This will result in malabsorption of proteins. Many degenerative conditions are associated with this problem, and that's what we specialize in, is degenerative conditions. Failure to absorb trace minerals and vitamins. These trace minerals and vitamins are very important. If we don't get those into our system, we are not going to be healthy. In fact, it helps to accelerate the aging process if we don't get proper mineralization and vitamins to our cells. Also, it affects neurodegenerative conditions. And once again, this is the ballpark that we play in. We help a lot of problems with those neurodegenerative conditions. Another one, failure to sterilize the stomach contents. Our stomach is very acidic. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But the reason why it is so that it sterilizes our foods. All the foods we eat, no matter if we cook them, wash them, whatever, they are going to contain things that we don't want in our system. Bugs, bacteria, fungus, things of that nature. So the stomach acid helps to sterilize those things and to kill off those critters, if you want to say. Allergies. A lot of times if we don't get proper digestion to our food, we get allergy issues, okay? Because small microbes get into the system, and therefore we are not able to, we create antibodies, and then we get an allergy reaction. Fermentation of the brain. When the food sits in our gut, it starts to ferment if it's not digested quickly or properly. And that fermentation process causes a release of gases. Well, those things can also get into our blood supply and into the brain. And this is one of the thought processes and hypotheses of why when people have some kinds of food sensitivities, that they have different reactions like hyperactivity or other psychotic events, okay? Now when I say psychotic events, I'm not talking about the major ones, all right? Increased risk of stomach cancer. If we don't have proper digestion of food and proper stomach acid, we can have issues with increased stomach cancer. Malabsorption of vitamin B12, very, very important. And another one that's really important is anemia, especially iron deficiency anemia. So let's go through this and so you have a better understanding. And one thing I want to do is try to make it simple for you, but not just make it simple, I want to make sure that you understand it. And the thing that I want to do is I want you to be able to understand this whole thing better than your doctor does. So when you go into your medical doctor and he wants to talk to you or prescribe these medications, you have a good foundation of understanding why it's probably not the best thing to take a medication for this. All right, so let's go into this. So, nice little picture here. We have our foods that we eat. Unfortunately, this is showing the standard American diet. It goes down the esophagus into the stomach. From the stomach, it goes into the small intestines. We have a couple of bile ducts. We have the gallbladder, we have the liver, and then we have the pancreatic duct that go into the small intestine as well to help with different things of the absorption and also the digestive processes. So I'm going to explain that in more detail. I just wanted to go over this just kind of so you have basic anatomy here. Now, a healthy stomach, the pH is at 1 to 3. So that's how acidic it is. Now, everywhere else in our body, we don't want acidic. The reason is because when something is acidic, it's not getting proper oxygen. And that's not good for our bodies, right? But the stomach is very important to be acidic. We're going to talk about that in just a second of why. But we want it to be 1 to 3. When that food then goes in, we call it a bolus. When that food then goes into the small intestine is responsible for about 90% of the absorption. So most of the nutrients we get are from the small intestine. Now, here's our problem. If we don't have that good acidity and enough stomach acid, the food just has a tendency to sit. And the food should not sit in our stomach for too long. It's meant to go through that process actually rather quickly. A low pH also helps to kill the critters. We kind of talked about that. The bolus of food needs to be acidic so that the pancreas releases its proper digestive enzymes. Now, the other issue we have is the secretin is a hormone that contracts the pancreas, which allows it to then release those digestive enzymes. So if we don't have proper acidity of the food as it exits the stomach into the small intestine, we're not going to get those proper digestive enzymes. If we don't get proper digestive enzymes, that absorption that we talked about, that 90%, is not going to take place at a proper number. It's going to be reduced. And if we have reduction of absorption of minerals and vitamins, proteins, all those things, what happens? We don't have proper health. Now, everyone has talked, and most people know about heartburn. They've heard about it. So I put this up here so you have a little bit better understanding. Why all the burning? Well, I'm going to propose a little bit different thought process. Most people think they have the heartburn because, once again, they've listened to commercials and pharmacology and things of that nature, and they think they have too much stomach acid. Well, the reality is they have too little stomach acid. And what happens is that food goes into the gut, and instead of exiting in a proper way, it sits there. And if it sits there, then that acid that is meant to help that digestive process is now, if you want to say, on top of the food, because the food has weight, right? And so now there's excess acidity or stomach acid that's not being in the digestion of the food. Now it's sitting on top of the food and it's exiting areas that you're not supposed to have it exit. That would be the esophagus. The esophagus, that tissue does not have proper, is not made to have the acidity that the stomach has. That's why we have the burning. But once again, it's not because we have too much stomach acid. It's because we have too little stomach acid that is not able to digest the food properly, so our food sits in the gut. Okay? So, do you feel bloated after meals? If the food sits for too long, it's going to build up. We just talked about this. It's going to build up and escape in other areas. And those other areas, unfortunately, are the esophagus. That's why we have heartburn. Now, I want to tell you something. I truly believe that right now you know more about stomach acid in the aspect of the cause for heartburn than, unfortunately, most of the medical doctors. The truth is, doctors of all kinds, whether the medical doctors, chiropractors, osteopaths, whatever, most doctors are behind the science. And there was a study that came out last year, I believe, that said most doctors are behind the science approximately 12 years. That's insane. Well, I study a lot, and I'm on a neurological board that I get a lot of great information. And some of that is how I came across the hypochlorhydria and the effects that it has in my education and learning process. What happens is a doctor would say, oh, you have too much stomach acid, so we're going to give you a prescription for one of these drugs, whether it's Prilosec, Prevacid, Zantac, whatever, right? And they give you that drug, and those are called proton pump inhibitors. The proton pump inhibitors, what they do is they stop hydrogen from going into the stomach. And that then does not allow hydrochloric acid to be made, because you need a hydrogen, a chloride, and you need zinc to make up hydrochloric acid. Now, not only do we have prescriptions, we have all kinds of over-the-counter drugs that people just take unknowingly because they're watching TV and they're seeing commercials and they're like, oh, I have heartburn, I need to go get some medication. So unfortunately, we are not educating ourselves properly. We're letting pharmacology educate us. So let's go through this a little bit on the importance of, if we have improper digestion and malabsorption, then we do not get proper vitamins, minerals, and proteins. So what does your blood work look like? Are you short on certain vitamins and minerals? And if you are you short in those minerals because of improper eating, which is possibly the case, or is it because of improper absorption? Think about that for a second. If we don't have proper absorption, we're not going to get the vitamins, minerals, and proteins that we're supposed to have. So therefore, what happens? All of a sudden our labs show up and we're low in magnesium. And our doctor says, oh, you need to take some magnesium. Well, is that true, or are we just not absorbing it properly so it's not getting into our bloodstream and therefore not getting to where it needs to go? So once again, remember, failure to digest foods if we don't have enough proper stomach acid, failure to absorb trace minerals and vitamins, failure to sterilize the food, we can have allergy responses, we can have increased risk of stomach cancer, as well as B12 malabsorption, and once again, some anemias. And those are never good. The liver also has a very important play in this digestion process. The liver is where our bile is at. And our bile then also goes into, it's made in the liver and goes into the gallbladder and stored in the gallbladder. When we don't have proper acidity, we're not getting proper bile into the digestive tract. Now our bile is very important because it helps break down food. That's why when people have their gallbladder taken out, once something I like to explain to a patient is, if your gallbladder was so bad that it needed to be out instead of being in, then you've already had an organ that has failed. You've had organ system failure. Now, if you have heart organ system failure, you die, right? People think that it's okay, it's only a gallbladder. Well, the gallbladder is very, very important because it helps to break down fats. And that's why people that have a gallbladder taken out, they have a hard time eating greasy foods, which really isn't healthy for us anyway, but they have a hard time eating those foods. Not only that, it also affects the way we can break down our vitamins that are fat-soluble vitamins, most notably vitamin D. So, there's a lot of information I've given you here, but it's basic information. And I hope you understand this. You can watch this over and over again to understand it a little bit better. And guess what? You can find it on Google. Look up hypochlorhydria, and you'll find out it's not just Dr. Watt speaking. There's a lot of good information out there about it. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Once again, my name is Dr. Shane Watt, and I practice in South Jordan, Utah. My phone number is 801-495-4444, or you can email me at whatisupdoc@yahoo.com. Once again, it's whatisupdoc@yahoo.com. Thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful day.